So in today's video, I'm going to talk about the 5 mistakes I made when starting Warcraft Rumble. If you're interested in the game, you can download it for free. The link's down below. Shout out to Warcraft Rumble for sponsoring today's video. And let's go ahead and get into the 5 mistakes I've made. Mistake number 1, spreading my roster way too wide. So focusing too much on different minis. So when they pop up in the tombs, for instance, if I go down here and I am spending my gold, which will bring us into point number 2 here in just a moment. When I'm spending my gold, I'll do one here as an example. Just like, oh, this card looks interesting. Let me try that one. For instance, I don't really use this card that much, but maybe I wanted to try it out and level it up. Instead, I'm just going to go with the card I actually end up using. This goes doubly for leaders. You're going to want one of each different leader so that when you get in the campaign, you'll have different leaders available to get the sigils that you need by completing your tracks here in the hard mode campaign. So you don't want to be like, I'm going to try this leader and then try this leader and then try this leader, just like you don't want to do that for minis. Because if you look at the level, as you level up your units, they obviously are going to have a baseline strength level that increases. And as you look on the map, as you progress through the campaign, they get higher level and higher level and higher level. So you want to focus down on the cards that you're going to use, preferably cards that you're going to use across multiple different factions. Like for instance, I use Patchwork in almost all of my decks. He's just one of my favorite cards, so I use him as a tank, for instance. So that way you can utilize using your resources without just spreading them all over the place. This is a mistake I made earlier on. I focused on a lot of cards I ended up just not really using that much. Like for instance, mages I use in a couple deck, but I don't really use them as much as I once did. And you can see I have it all the way to level 19 here. So if I could do it again, I would just be very, very particular about what I choose to level, what leaders I choose to level. I mean, I have a level 20 and a 19 here of the same faction. I got multiple of the undead ones higher level than I should. So just, I would focus more like I did with the Alliance, where it's like I have a 22 and there's 16 and 15. You know, I'm not like having multiple at 18, 19 or something like that. So just keep that in mind. Point number 2, you're probably going to notice on some of my decks here as I click through them, is ignoring your dungeons. The dungeons themselves actually give you bonus levels on your cards as a reward for your slots here. And you can slot them in depending upon what kind of deck you're actually end up building here. So for that reason, you don't want to ignore your dungeons, or else you're going to end up like me and you only did the dungeons for the decks you really like. But like I was mentioning earlier, and in the first mistake, is that you are going to need multiple decks from multiple different faction sources in order to actually be able to progress through your campaign and get sigils. And you're going to need sigils because that's what literally unlocks things like raids and sieges later on. So don't make that mistake either. Very similar to the first one. Mistake number 3 is using your gold like too loosely. You want to be careful with your gold and only really use it when it's a card, again, you're heavily focusing on. So the same way that you're going to do it with the tombs, the same way you're going to do it with the leaders, you're going to want to do the same thing with your gold and really progress buying. When you save up your gold from clearing the campaign, you get gold for free. You're going to want to end up buying the rewards related to the deck that you're building the most. So for me, that would be Alliance and Undead, for instance. For you, I don't know what deck you're really into, but you would want to be focusing on those, or maybe when the units pop up that you're really, really into at that point. Also, don't miss the events. For instance, like Dark Moon Fair, you can go through here, you can complete challenges. These challenges will actually end up giving you gold that you can use to acquire it, but they'll also give you tombs as well. So much like don't miss the dungeons, you kind of don't want to miss out on your events. Tip number 4 for me is when you're actually in a battle, what you don't want to do is just on tap. As soon as you have enough gold, just spam, okay, I got 7 gold, so let me just throw out 7 gold worth of things. You want to try to counter the units that are actually coming out to you. One of the first things I did when I was just playing the game is let me just drop whatever units. Okay, 1 gold, 2 gold, 3 gold. Let me just drop a unit now. You actually want to like look at what's coming and then try to counter the unit with a unit that counters it, for instance. So if they have a ground, melee, only hits other ground units, then you drop an air unit. If they have a high value, like single target tank type of thing, maybe use your Banshee, for instance. So you want to try to be a little bit more careful with your gold. This will also open you up to like opportunity attacks, where it's like, okay, they don't have anything. You know that you just counter them. They drained a whole bunch. Maybe they ran into your turret. So for instance, what you can actually do is use your turret's HP almost like as a pseudo bank. So they'll attack into you. You'll lose maybe 50% of your turret health or something. But then time you were stacking up your gold, they use their gold to attack your turret, for instance. And then you can stack behind with a really big push and then sort of get a big wave going. So don't be too like immediate with spamming. Like be a little bit more slower, methodical about the actual plays you're making when you're within a battle. I'm just going to throw this one into this tip too, because that one's a little obvious and just as another combat related tip. because we're talking about gold here, don't miss out on the value that is associated with claiming the chests and claiming your gold mines with the kobolds. That gold's pretty important if what we're talking about is the economy, and the economy is going to win the game. So for that reason, you want to prioritize on winning the map as opposed to just winning the individual fights, for instance. And winning the map alone is going to give you the ability to win the battle overall, because you're actually winning on the economy, much like an RTS game. Like if you guys played, you know, Warcraft or StarCraft or something, like the person who has a better economy very often wins, and that translates over to this game as well. A fifth mistake I made was not getting into a guild early enough. And because of that, I missed out on a lot of resources. A lot of the best resources you're going to get actually end up coming from your guild or clan, whatever you really want to call it, right? And for that reason, I do recommend actually getting into one yourself. Here's an example of you can get quite a bit of rewards actually from this, so I do recommend getting into one as early as possible. You don't necessarily need to be the most social person ever, but it would be good to go in there, contribute just doing your battles. You basically contribute just by playing the game like you normally would literally anyway, and then it's a good way that when you progress far enough, you can eventually end up using this as a way to meet people to do raids, for instance, which you do need multiple people on. So there's multiple reasons outside of like just the rewards. It's also the content in the game that it might be a smart idea for you to go ahead and get into one of these early. And of course, don't forget your 5x bonus reward from your daily quest, which is what I am doing here. They can be pretty fun, but they're also pretty rewarding because it's a 5x. So there we go. Battle is over. And now we can claim the actual daily quest. There we go. Griffin Rider, thank you very much. Another way to target down the minions. So you definitely want to do some research. There's a lot of YouTubers out there that are much more knowledgeable about myself, much longer term players that have gotten a lot farther in the game. So I would probably recommend going out and doing a little research and finding some really good high tier decks. Finding out what you think looks like a fun deck, and then doubling down and focusing in particular on that deck and trying to push all your resources in that one direction. That's about it. Thanks for watching this video. Shout out to Warcraft Rumble for sponsoring today's video, and I'll see you on the next one.